So my name is Trevor Budge, and I am a hydrogeologist. I identify as a windbag hydrogeologist, and so be ready. My wife and children, they tend to think I'm an arrogant hydrogeologist. Data tends to agree with them more than me. Let's see. So today, I would like to present to you, because I'm a windbag, I would like to present to you a story. And it's a love story, and it's going to be in the classic template of a fairy tale. I am going to play the damsel in distress, and PEST HP, which is the software that is used, will be the knight in shining armor. We are not sure if PEST HP will win or not, and we'll have a special cameo midway through from Marsh Lavenue. He's going to play one of two roles, either the evil stepfather or the fairy godfather. You'll have to wait. That's called tension in the industry. So I do have to say, let's go through the opening credits here. We've got, myself. I had help from Hi Fam with INTERA. He's in our Austin office, and he helped out a lot with this. This story is co-produced by the Department of Energy. With some help from CPCco. They're the prime contractor that we work with as a teaming partner. CPCco is an Amentum, Atkins, and Floor company. And then all the other bit parts will be played by other INTERA employees there are too many to name all at one time. So the objective I have from this story is I just want to share something that when I was in a moment of crisis, something that helped me out. It's a little technique. It may be helpful to you or not. If it is helpful, great. At worst, you can, if you look at it and say, man, I did that back in 1996. Well, that's fine. What I hope you get from this talk is a warm feeling of superiority that you can take with you, so you won't need to stand underneath the headlamps tonight. But if that does happen, you might be an egotistical hydrogeologist, so you might want to get that checked out. And anyway, so let's go to the Kingdom of Hanford. A long time ago in the Kingdom of Hanford, starting in 1944, all the way through 1987, the Hanford site in south central Washington was used to enrich fissile products to use in weapons. And if you know the United States, we have a lot of them. So that made a lot of byproducts. And it left behind a whole, what I would call affectionately, a potpourri of contamination. Now you've got groundwater plumes, and that's what's shown here right now, that are already through the vadose and have hit the groundwater. You have waste that is left in tanks that is being stored and protected, trying not to release it at all. And then you have some that's in the vadose that is on its way down. And so we have all of these things, and there's a need to understand what is going to get to groundwater in the future, what our remedial objectives are going to help clean up right now, and to make those decisions on how we can best clean up the site through time. And so we have this product called the CIE, and I guess I just noticed that I didn't explain what CIE meant. Oh well, it's Cumulative Impact Evaluation. And this was requested by the regulators. They wanted us to put together a tool set that included all the features, events, and processes we could think of, so they would have a tool in order to determine if we make this decision, how does that impact all the others? Because you can look and see all these plumes are commingled, and it can be hard sometimes to tell where those impacts are coming from. So we were tasked with coming up with this cumulative impact tool set. And it's very complex and very complicated. I'm not going to get into even the least little bit of it today. Just know that it has all sorts of components and facets that lead into it. And so it has, geology that comes from lots of wells. It has decision making that we have to track when and where decisions are being made, where they were made in the past, and what those impacts are going to be. It has, and how that impacts recharge. And we have to know how much of this material was where and when throughout the site. And then we have vadose models that help transfer this stuff down to the groundwater. And it's very complex. And in the end, the thing that we're going to talk about some is the saturated zone, because this is meant, the objective of this tool is to look at what's in groundwater. And so all of these inputs end up in groundwater. And so the only thing that anyone's going to look at are the plumes and the mass balances that come out of the groundwater. I mean, yeah, all the other stuff is there, but no one's going to look at it. That's a lot of pressure. Now, fortunately or unfortunately, I was the one who was in charge of this bottom part. So everybody wanted to know what's going to happen. I just wanted to give another picture. We've got the vadose facet has 24 vadose models, 409 total sites. That's not counting some of the spills that occurred. And it's highly complex and everything else. But no one's going to really pay attention to that because all they really want to know is what's going to happen to the groundwater. And so since 2015, this is a picture of the P2R model, the domain, and I've been in charge of making sure that developing this model and moving it through the process. We've had about 4 rounds of upgrades and comments from regulators and stakeholders trying to improve and put in the features that they want to see in the model. And so we've used PEST HP to go through this, and at this point it gets used quite extensively at the Hanford site to support CERCLA and RCRA projects. And so we have this model, and we, as part of the CIE, Greg Ruskoff helped put together the technical approach. We proposed that we would upgrade this model and put in things that they wanted to see. And so we went about that process, but all those things that were being developed all happened in parallel. And so we didn't have all the information sorted out to use in our history matching and in our calibration. So as we were moving through this process, everybody was like, oh, I can't wait till we get it all together and we can put it in the saturated zone and we're going to see what happens. And everybody's excited, Trevor, you got that project, all right? And so there was a lot of pressure building. And so you cue the sad trombone music because I got all the data. Everybody said, Trevor, put it together, let's have a meeting. And I put those things in, sad trombone right here. Because this is these 4 pictures illustrate the 2 on top are contours that are a contour map in a very politically charged area. And so those 2 are what the observed contours at at 2017, which was the beginning of our simulation, and 2019, because it took 3 years to get this all together. So we had 3 years that had passed. And then this is our simulated initial condition, and we nailed it. We nailed the initial condition. Good job by us, right? How hard is that? But you look 2 years later, and the plume does not even resemble at all what people are seeing. And I sent this out, said, hey, maybe we should have a meeting to discuss this. And so they said, yeah, let's have a meeting tomorrow. And so I get on the meeting, and it's a Teams meeting, and I'm looking, and all of a sudden, more people start joining. I'm like, oh, that's not good. And then all of a sudden, I see Marsh is in the meeting. I'm like, wait, why is Marsh in the meeting? Why are all the executives in the company in the meeting? And that's when I remember the old adage that we hear at these conferences, that all models are wrong, and some models get you fired. And I was like, oh, this isn't good. This can't be good. And so I'm starting to feel the pressure of what's going on right now. And so luckily for me, Marsh was the fairy godfather, right? Because he listened, the biometrics were elevated in that room that day. There were people, and I was not the hero in this. I was the distressed one. Marsh listened to everybody, and he used his magic wand, bibbity bobbity. I'm not going to finish that because I don't want to get sued by the Disney Corporation. But he said, Trevor, you got 2 weeks. And so he gave me a little bit of reprieve on that. And so I said, I better do something quick. And so I thought, I do what all good groundwater modelers do. I thought, what would John Doherty do, right? And I sat there and I thought, okay, I need a smooth derivative, right? Got to find a smooth derivative to help constrain this problem. And I'm going to really quickly take just this area of the model and do a focused recalibration. And so I propose this. I say, hey, we're going to do this focused recalibration. And this shows before and after. We got version 8.3 of the P2R model. And then over here, we got version 8.3.1. That's the adjustment that we made. And we made that adjustment by, we talked about bullseyes for K-fields. This is more of a shotgun blast. because if you have a shotgun, so the black points up at the top, those were our pilot points in the first, calibration, the one that didn't do so well on the representativeness issue. And then the orange ones are where we put pilot points the second time in this focus recalibration. So it's the, shotgun pilot points, or highly parameterized, whatever you want to call it. But we still needed that constraint. Now, at the Hanford site, we are lucky because we have a long history. And I thought to myself, we have all of these annual reports, and every year they make a contour map of the Tech 99 plumes. I said, I can use those. We had tried in the past to use some point measurements and had little luck because we couldn't get. There's inconsistency of where they take points. There's noise in the data, and so it's hard to filter out and get a nice smooth landing pad for PEST to come in on. And so I thought, what could I do with these plumes? These plumes that are generated have expert opinion involved. They've already gone through all the data, and so let's use that. So I took those plumes and I plopped them on a map, and I said, wow, there's still a lot of noise up here. So I'm just not going to use the plumes, but if I just count up and say, how many times has this place been contaminated over the last 23 years, or 24? And I looked, I said, well, that's smoother, I could use that. But then we said, well, let's go ahead and smooth it out even more. Let's do an inverse distance weighted, interpolation of that. So we went from frequency to smooth frequency of Tech 99. We said, let's use that, and we can do the same calculation on our simulated results, put them in PEST, and see what happens. Now we're going to enter the portion of the presentation which will now be the Jim Schutz memorial portion, where it's, hey, let's look at how great the model is, right? We're going to look at some plots. And so we've got here a whole bunch of plots that you can see. There's triplets on here, a triplet for each year that we're looking at: 1995, 2005, 2010, 2015, 2018. Each first one is that plume that is in the annual report. The next panel is the first model, 8.3, which had the representativeness issues. And the third panel is the new calibration that went through PEST HP. And in each case, the model does it improves the way that it represents that plume. This is a simulation from 1943 to 2018. You might ask, why didn't you just do this from the start? Well, we didn't have this source term. There wasn't a good estimate of Tech 99, how it came in from 1943 to 2018. The CIE, that tool set, provided that source term. So I was able to use that in order to put this calibration together. And so we couldn't have done this before. So now we have this, we use that little technique to get a smooth derivative. We use the CIE as our good source term. And then and we were able to improve the representativeness of the model. Now, the other thing is you can do that, but did you impact the flow? This model was calibrated to flow, and it calibrated really well. And so we didn't want to mess that up. And what I'm showing here is just a comparison. You really can't see much of a difference. There are actually two curves on each. There's red dots that are the observed head measurements, and then there's up here you see there's the old model is the dashed red line, and the blue line is the new model. You really can't see a difference in most of the hydrographs. You can see a little bit down here, you see a little bit of difference up there, you see some difference there, but overall in the time period that we really care about, 2008 and into the future, you can't see a difference. So this little technique helped us get there. Just the next slide is just looking at the flow budget. You really don't see much of a difference, except this is just flow in, flow out, and a time, over time. Each of the lines represents a different part of the flow budget. Green is the recharge. The blue line is one of the specified heads that's really important, and you can see that's really the only major change, but it doesn't change much. And the important parts of that curve really didn't change. So we were able to accomplish those two things using this little technique. And so. And this is just one last thing showing the concentrations. Red dots are, again, observed Tech 99. The green is the old model, the blue is the new model, and in each case, in areas where it's really important, where politically it's charged and people are definitely going to look, we do a better job. So at this point, we had accomplished, PEST HP had saved the day. I was okay, and so we were able to accomplish this. The real thing that this brings out is something, and I think it was something that, it was something Willem talked about yesterday. I don't see where you are, but it was just, oh, there you are. Yeah, the importance of, this model, there's not a lot of, I don't have any horsetail plots. I didn't use the Freiberg model, but this is important to show, because if I would have gone into my meeting and shown that, there's really, if you look at the simulation length, 1,000 years that the CIE looks at, there is no real difference in the two models. Over time, that plume still went in that direction. And if the difference is about 10 to 15 years. And so for the whole model, there's really not that big of a difference when you're looking on the scale of 1,000 years. But if I would have gone in with the first one, we would have been laughed out. They would have said, we don't trust your model. And so I guess the cautionary tale is to, the moral of this fairy tale is to remember that you want to wear your best dress to the ball. When you go in, you want to make sure that people know that we know, if we just go in saying uncertainty, 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 then we run the risk of people just not believing us and saying, well, yeah, these scientists don't know anything. So I think that's, if I'm putting words in your mouth, well, you can comment. But it is important to put that best foot forward so that there is confidence. We are experts in our field, and it's good to do that. And so with that, I will just say that Trevor Budge and PEST HP lived happily ever after, and Marsh continued to sign Trevor's check to this very day. The end.
Thank you very much, Trevor. I thought you were doing great until the crack about Freiberg, so I guess you're out of time for questions. We've got time for questions. Anything for Trevor?
Actually, I'd like to make a quick comment. I think it's really great, Trevor, looking at the two fields and how the differences are very subtle. Yeah. And like neither of those, if the left one was acceptable from the standpoint of the geology and that stuff, subtle changes made all the difference that you need, and that's great.
Yeah.
Trevor, over here. So I'll forgive you for not using Freiberg, but so these clever tricks. That's a really clever trick, and you did it not because the purity of the modeling depended on it, but you needed that for consensus building.
Yeah.
So there's an interesting trade-off between being absolutely pure technically and then making a tool that people will get behind. And I think generally we are way onto that limb of absolute technical purity, and maybe there's nothing wrong with sacrificing a little bit of purity to get the plume to appear more appropriate, just to get people behind the tool. Right?
And also I think we're lucky. This is obviously, this area is very. There's a lot of data. Like, this is a data-rich thing, and a lot of the problems that we're talking about are places where we're like, oh, we don't have much data, and so in the Kingdom of Hanford, there are many riches of well logs and and data points, and so we're lucky. There. I was going to say the moral of the story was, build a time machine, go collect 30 years of data, and then have it in case there's a crisis, right? That's not feasible, right? And so a lot of the things where we're going with uncertainty are places where we don't have data. Here is where people have data, and they're going to come at you and throw you under the bus. And so, this was just a quick. And all I'm saying is that there is importance of these tools that we've used in the past. Right, and that yes, the new tools are great, but don't neglect. Is this where I plug Fortran, everybody? Just.
All right. Trevor, where you show a simulated bit of plume versus where it's not observed, is that because there isn't data there?
I'm sorry, which?
In some of your plots, you show, where, that slide where you had the, the multiple years. You'll see little bits of simulated plume, in kind of, fugitive little areas. Is that where you don't have data?
No, well, yes, there's a lot. Well, we actually, because those Vadozone models cover a lot of area, there's uncertainty in that source term. And so you're going to get that's an area where there's some source breaking through that's not observed.
Right, and my point would be is to make your story even better, put where you have your observation points, to make it clear that.
Oh yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah. No.
Hey, Trevor. I was wondering, should I call you Sir Trevor? If you could, from the kingdom.
PEST HP was the
the
knight.
shining armor. Yes. So I'm wondering if, with your experience in this kingdom of Hanford, full of data, what advice or primary data sets, maybe on the cheaper end, you would wish to give to those of us operating in sites with such little amounts of data, poppers in your fields.
Yeah, there's nothing cheap at Hanford. But I mean, I mean, that's what I was thinking about, because it's like, well, why even show this to everybody? Because it's like we're spoiled with riches, and you don't necessarily, like this smooth map. I didn't necessarily need data to make it, right? But it's nice to have expert opinion in it. There is a big push at Hanford to do a lot of, surface geophysics, things like that, to try and enhance things with limited success. So they are looking at things like that. But in the end, the stuff that really helped in the end, we didn't use concentration point data. We used the expert opinions and information that went into making those plume maps. Some of them were hand-drawn. Some of them were interpolated with algorithms. And it's a mix of all that together. So, there's not one way to storm a castle, right? I can't say which one's better. But all I'd say is that, the thing is to get consensus, and maybe that's, you let the stakeholders, help out, right? And maybe that's what the whole elicitation process is saying, how do we need to, what do we think this looks like in the past, and how do we push it forward? So you're gathering that data through an elicitation process or something like, anyway.
Now it's time to roll the credits, and the damsel can ride off into the sunset.
Oh.
Next up.